Have you ever felt that the deeper you think, the more isolated you become? That the more you understand, the less people want to listen? This isn't just in your head. Society has always feared deep thinkers, not because they are wrong, but because they see what others refuse to acknowledge. History proves it. From Socrates to Galileo, from Tesla to Schopenhauer, brilliant minds have been ridiculed, silenced, or ignored, not due to a lack of intelligence, but because they made people uncomfortable. But why does this happen? Why does society resist those who think differently? The answer lies deep within human psychology. Consider this. When you stand next to someone physically strong, you don't necessarily feel weak. You admire their strength. When you meet someone wealthy, you might envy them, but you don't feel personally attacked. But when you encounter someone intellectually superior, something different happens. Psychologists call this the mirror effect. A deep thinker does not just introduce new ideas. They force others to confront their own limitations, and people do not forgive that easily. The mere presence of someone who thinks deeply can make others feel inadequate, even if the deep thinker says nothing at all. But why? When someone is stronger than us, we might see them as a leader or protector. When someone is wealthier, we might admire their success or aspire to achieve the same. These qualities, strength, wealth, beauty, are external. They don't necessarily challenge our core self-perception. But intelligence? That's different. Our thoughts, beliefs, and understanding of the world define who we are. When we meet someone who questions what we take for granted, it can feel like a direct attack on our identity. Instead of admiring intelligence, many people subconsciously resist it. Not because the deep thinker is arrogant, but because their very existence forces others to confront their own ignorance. This is why, throughout history, deep thinkers have been pushed to the fringes of society. Their insights don't just challenge ideas, they challenge egos. And humans, by nature, will do almost anything to protect their ego from discomfort. Have you ever introduced a deep idea in a casual conversation, only to be met with blank stares or awkward silence? Noticed how people quickly change the topic when discussions become too deep or philosophical? This isn't coincidence. It's a defense mechanism. When people encounter a deep thinker, their mind goes into self-preservation mode. Instead of being curious, they resist. Instead of engaging, they dismiss. Studies even show that confidence is valued more than intelligence in social settings. This is why charismatic, simplistic thinkers gain more influence than deep thinkers who speak with nuance. History is full of examples: populist leaders, motivational speakers, viral influencers, all thriving by telling people what they want to hear, rather than what they need to hear. Meanwhile, those who challenge popular beliefs struggle to find a broad audience. Neuroscience confirms this. Studies show that when people feel intellectually inferior, the amygdala, the brain's fear and threat detection center, becomes highly active. In simple terms, deep thinking is not just intimidating, it triggers a primal survival response, similar to the fear of physical danger. But why? For most of human history, survival did not depend on being the smartest. It depended on being accepted by the tribe. Early humans thrived in groups where social harmony meant safety. Being rejected by the tribe could mean death. This is why our brains are wired for social acceptance over intellectual pursuit. When a highly intelligent person enters a group, they unknowingly disrupt the tribal balance. Their presence challenges existing ideas, social norms, and group dynamics. The brain treats them as a threat, not because they are dangerous, but because they disrupt the comforting illusion of certainty. A 2021 study at Stanford University found something even more shocking. One-on-one, people feel less threatened by an intellectual. But in group settings, the threat response spikes dramatically. Why? Because in groups, social status becomes more important than truth. If someone feels outshined by a deep thinker, they instinctively try to undermine or exclude them, not because of logic, but to protect their social standing. This explains why deep thinkers often have meaningful conversations in private, but struggle in large social settings. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers, believed that intelligence wasn't a gift, but a curse. Why? Because intelligent people don't just seek pleasure like others. They seek truth, even when it leads to pain, isolation, and discomfort. Most people seek pleasure and avoid difficult truths. Deep thinkers seek truth, even when it makes them suffer. This creates a fundamental disconnect between intellectuals and the rest of society. Most people find meaning in relationships, entertainment, and routine pleasures. Deep thinkers often feel disillusioned with these things, seeing them as distractions from deeper existential questions. Schopenhauer wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. The more you understand, the harder it is to ignore. The more you see, the harder it is to be happy. The more you think deeply, the lonelier you become." So what can deep thinkers do? Does this mean intellectuals are doomed to loneliness? Not at all. But it does mean you need to understand the forces working against you. Here's how to navigate society without sacrificing your depth. Don't waste deep thoughts on shallow conversations. Not everyone is ready for deep discussions. Choose your audience wisely. Find like-minded individuals. Instead of trying to fit into mainstream society, seek people who think like you. Learn to communicate depth simply. Einstein once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." The greatest thinkers in history knew how to make complex ideas accessible. Use solitude as a strength. Instead of seeing isolation as punishment, use it for creativity, reflection, and growth. Understand that society only values intelligence in hindsight. Galileo was imprisoned. Tesla died in obscurity. Socrates was executed. Yet today they are celebrated as geniuses. Schopenhauer said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." Deep thinkers see the world differently, and that will always make some people uncomfortable. But remember this, it is deep thinkers who push humanity forward. So if you've ever felt like an outsider for your thoughts, know this, you are not alone. But what do you think? Have you ever felt rejected for thinking deeply? Share your thoughts in the comments.